Thank you for listening to All Things Tech.
And welcome back to All Things Tech. This is Conscious Chat. Tonight we'll be continuing the second part of our podcast on the law of attraction and Bible codes. If you missed part one, you can always listen to that on www.truthbook.tk. Shows are available for free on SoundCloud and YouTube as well if you search Conscious Chat, or they are linked up on truthbook.tk, so you can just visit the website there. But I will be handing it over to Pseudo in the UK. Hex will be joining him in Australia. I believe he is in Sydney. But when we had left off, I believe you guys were speaking about God and energy, so I will hand it over to you, and let's just get started where we left off here.
When you say energy, that's another thing that I found intriguing, because, as I said before, it does state in the Bible the watchers, which is what we call today angels. But at the time, they were called watchers. God said before when He made humans, the watchers were the ones that were watching us, helping us. And for 200 of them to go against His will or His word made Him furious. But we do have watchers that are, so the thing is with the energy they say, they are the watchers that help us. They work for us. He says they work for us as we ask for them to do the work for us. But I don't know how that works, but as you're stating, that it is the energy that we make and we produce in our own mind. That it probably is. I reckon that's correct what you're saying, and I have a feeling that there might be a link to what I'm saying as well.
So when you say that God was made furious, we have to try and understand who is this entity that they are talking about, who was made furious, because to my mind, God does not incarnate Himself as a singular entity for the witnessing of individuals, beings, humans or whatever. And I suppose there is a reference to that kind of thing in the Bible where it says nobody can gaze upon the face of God and live. So maybe you're saying that this entity was made furious in the non-physical realm in the presence of these 200 watchers. I'm not sure. I guess that could be a possibility. In the non-physical, God could manifest Himself as a singular entity for some purpose, but I doubt whether it would truly be a singular entity given that everything else still exists, So who is this being that was made furious? That would be my question.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to question for a long time. Who made this creator or being or spirit or entity that made us angry? And that came into play when you think of Satan. When a lot of people think of Satan, they think, the devil, or the one that deceives people. But they don't think deceive. They just think, as you think Satan, a lot of people think hell, fires burning, a lot of lost souls, which is somewhat correct. But a lot of people don't know that Satan was actually God's favorite angel, and he was God's right-hand man before the time of us and these entities. Satan questioned God's idea and pretty much his thinking, saying, why can't these people think for themselves? Why can't they choose? I think that this was written down somewhere in history, but I can't remember what book I read it from and where I got the information from. But I know that Satan was the favorite angel of God. Now, before Satan was thrown out of heaven, God said to him, He's like, these people have everything they need. They don't need to feel hungry. They don't need to feel feelings. And why do they need to feel that when I've given them everything? Satan didn't agree with that, the plans of, God, and then so he went against him. They struck a deal. The deal was, God said to Satan, I'll give you the free will of people. If you can deceive them from trying to see the truth, then you can take their souls. And I don't know how this full complete story goes, but then I only know the part where Satan was thrown out of heaven because questioning God's ideals to how he wanted the perfect world. And so now the whole thing for me is there is a boundary between good and evil. Now, deceiving, with a lot of us, we think, but I think every time we think of something good or bad, it's a decision that we have to live with, and also something that we choose, whether we're going to go to good or bad. It's really hard to explain, actually. I had everything clearly written out in my mind that I can't even say right now. But if you understand what I'm saying, I think that the whole thing was, our challenge on this earth was to try and see if we end up winning this fantasy game that these two are playing, choosing sides, whether we choose right or wrong. And in the end of our career of this whole game, whether we choose what path we go to, what we do, and what the outcome has. As you're saying, these entities and these spirits, I think that they play a major role in our lives.
There's a lot to consider, isn't there? I mean, far too much for any one person to handle, really. But buying into this concept of somebody or a group of people being addressed by God, to me implies that God can address beings personally. So I would say, and I've said this before, that God can address beings personally, but I'm not saying that it's an entity that addresses us, just more like the spiritual force that addresses us directly. And I would suggest that it disperses the need for having a Bible. But what if, like you mentioned, basically like a grand deception? What if the grand deception is that there is this entity, like a personality, that can actually be addressed and pointed at and called God? What if that is the deception? Maybe it is just an energy and it can't be consulted in the way that anybody would conceive of one entity consulting another. Maybe it's not possible in that way. So what if having the picturization of a God being a single entity, somebody or something that you can go to, what if that is false, and what if that is actually idolatry?
That's true. It's interesting because I was thinking along the same lines, similar to that. For me, my ideal thinking is, since I got all this information and studied this over the vast few years, that I've come across information across information across information. Each information was always cut to a dead end, but then piecing them all together only makes sense. And then, myself, I am Catholic, Roman Catholic, but I now consider myself as not religious. I'm praying to I don't know what. I'm talking to a God that I never heard from before. And then I question every single thing in this world. You know, because sometimes if I do right, I feel like I'm doing wrong. If I'm doing wrong, I feel like I'm doing right. And then so it plays a major part, a key role in my life. But if I'm going to do wrong, I have to do right. If I'm going to do right, I have to do wrong, just to even up the odds.
Well, it's just the way things are. To know what wrong is, you have to know what right is. To know what right is, you have to know what wrong is. And neither one of those things can exist independently, because it's a matter of discerning one thing from another. So if we're in the business of discerning things, then both of these things have to exist. It's impossible for them not to. I wouldn't beat yourself up just because you're experiencing a good side of things and a bad side of things. It's just the balance, isn't it? You know what I mean? You can. It's just the way how you approach it, I suppose, psychologically. And I would suggest that you can get over that feeling of guilt, because guilt is the worst thing. It is the worst spiritual force that can be given vitality to, because guilt suggests that there's no answer to fix the issue. Guilt says it's wrong and it can't be righted. So guilt, in a sense, guilt is a false concept, because all wrongs can be righted, because those energies are in polarity. You know what I mean? It's just a movement from one state to another, and it will go from positive to negative to positive to negative indefinitely, as long as we can discern that the two things exist. I wouldn't place emotional emphasis onto it. I certainly wouldn't beat yourself up psychologically in any way, because that's going to be of no use to you whatsoever. I mean, what do a lot of people say? I can't remember, some famous person said that they realised that when they got to the end of their life, that to worry is absolutely pointless. It's ridiculous. And it is. So whatever's happened in your past, whatever thoughts you've had, good or bad, just forget about it, because you're in the now moment, and this is what counts.
Yeah, that is certainly true. And what you said earlier actually kind of surprised and shocked me with this whole energy thing. I don't know too much about it, but what you were saying, like the law of attractive, or the law of something. Now, if I was reading the passage when I was saying to you that these watches work for us, in my mind, I've put them to work, and this is what I want them to do for me. But I don't know for sure if it's working. But I've put them to work. This is what I said, this is what I want them to do. And it was interesting that you brought up, entities that, designed to work your way if you wanted to. That's what I think that you said. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, energies. The law of attraction basically states that which is like unto itself is drawn. And all day long, every day, everybody does it. We're all offering like a signal, a vibration. We are actually vibrational beings, and science has proved that everything boils down to vibration. Everything is vibrating, whether it looks solid, whether it appears solid, a piece of concrete, a piece of wood, water. Everything vibrates, including us. Our bodies vibrate. So we're constantly giving off a vibration, but we can be in control of this vibration. And the way that we can prove to ourselves that we're giving off a vibration is by analysis of what's happening to us and how we are responsible for the events that we experience. Now, as an example of the vibrational offerings that we give, say for instance, if you were in a house and you're having an argument with a family member, so you left the house and you was feeling quite upset, and then maybe you got into a car and later on that day something happened. You might have had a little collision, or you might have then gone to have a confrontation with somebody in the street, or you might have had an accident in your car or something like this. Now, these two things, for all intents and purposes, logically, you wouldn't say there was a link. The link is the vibrational offering. It can see when you put a signal out, you're a transmitter receiver. So when you put a signal out, something has to come back to you. You, when learning about the law of attraction, can decide which signal you're going to put out from now onwards. And your emotions are what they call a cybernetic guidance system. So think of, do you know when you launch a missile, or somebody launches a missile towards a target, and factors like the wind can push it off and things like that, but it's got some kind of positioning system attached to the missile, and it says, right, going off course now, pull back this way. Right, okay, you're heading for the target. Right, now you need to pull back the other way because you're going straight. Well, this is...
Yeah, sorry, man. I'm accidentally...
Yeah, well, the guidance system is our emotions, and our emotions let us know whether we're moving towards the thing that we want, because life is about co-creation and fulfillment, and our emotions let us know if we're going in the right direction towards fulfilling our desires. So if you're experiencing negative emotion, that's your cybernetics telling you that the way you're approaching this situation mentally is wrong. So you need to correct your thinking. So however you're looking on any subject, no matter what the subject is, if you're feeling negative emotion on it, it means you're not perceiving the situation as you should, and it's not helping, it is now hindering you. So then you have some self-analysis you ask yourself questions like, okay, so why am I feeling this way? Well, you're feeling this way probably because you're indulging in certain thoughts which are of a negative nature, to the extent that you've built up such momentum that now your cybernetic guidance system is screaming at you to say, stop doing this, because this isn't taking you where you want to go.
Interesting. That is very interesting. And I love the concept as well, because it does fit in with the way that I think also, but never actually took into mind and considered it in some fashion of what you were saying, which is interesting to me. You mind me asking, where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I'm currently in the United Kingdom, northeast.
Yeah, nice. Are you a psychologist, or do you major in any sort of masters?
Nothing like that. It's everything I understand. It's just I've just had the desire to know things, and just through my own personal researches, I've developed my own understanding of. Well, I guess it's not my understanding anyway. It's always somebody else's recycled thoughts, isn't it? So I'm not academic in any way.
Yeah, true. It's very, very interesting. And then you're right. It's like someone else's trash that they had thrown out, and we find it as a very interesting information. Like the old saying is, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I was intrigued with that, that concept. And any sort of information to me is very useful. How you know about these books and the law of attraction. I've never read anything into that, but trying to figure out where it's leading me, I don't know. I'm still trying to search for information on other things as well. See, when I say watches, there was a book I was reading a couple of months back. It was called The Strangers in the Pentagon. Interesting book. Very, very interesting book. Now, the Strangers in the Pentagon was about another life being from Venus, a planet that we call Venus. That's exactly what he said in the book. Now, his name was...
Sorry, just before you mention his name, just as a little bit of proof that I do know what you're speaking about there. His name is Valiant Thought.
Yes, and yeah. So you do know what I'm talking about. So anyway, it was interesting what he said when he said that we don't give enough credit to our God. And mind you, remember his intelligence span is 1200 to what our intelligence span is. That's amazing. And I've always had the mind and an open mind to other life beings. Because I want to care. I really want to care if there is other life beings, because I would love to learn of them. Why we call these other life beings aliens is not true, because it states that I don't know what disciple said it, but he said that we will call these aliens, we will call these watchers aliens, and how that comes into mixing into the same terms of, you know, strangers in the Pentagon, trying to piece together a puzzle of every single book that I've read, and it's probably over thousands of books I've read so far, and piecing together each and every word, you know, that has nothing to do with each other. It only makes sense in my mind, if you understand what I mean, which you probably do.
I know what you're getting at. I mean, there's so much information out there, but you're only coming at it in one lifetime, so you can only pull so much information from the reservoir, and you'll pull the information that pertains to the investigations that you are making. And when I mentioned the recycled thoughts and things like that, basically you kind of alluded to it. Through digesting these materials, you come to understand that everything is simultaneous. Now, you've heard before, haven't you, people say, oh, time is a man-made concept. We've all heard that. I heard a cute line once. Somebody said, time is invented to stop everything happening at once. That's very interesting. It's probably very true. But all these things, apparently, when you learn these teachings, like from these non-physical entities and such, they say everything is happening. Everything that has happened and everything that will happen is actually happening right now, in this moment, because there is never anything more than the live moment. But we kind of partition or screen ourselves off from the rest of the quote-unquote cosmos. I mean, you imagine it. You couldn't experience it all as a human being. It would be overkill. You wouldn't have the computing ability. It would be complete chaos. I mean, we're quite humble beings, really. This is like being on holiday, you know, from all that is. It's a way that we can look at things linearly. We can relax, you know what I mean? We don't have to consider everything that's going on at once. The environment is slow. It's still plastic. We can mold it. But unlike when you have, say, for instance, a lucid dream, and then you think of the thing and it instantly manifests just like that before you, this is more like slow time, you know, and it's just another approach to existence.
Yeah, that's totally true. Because not only that, as intriguing as it sounds like when you mentioned the time and how it's there to pretty much suppress one, yet let alone trillions of people. There was a stage in history, and this is not mentioned very much, and I can't remember which king cut the days down to 7, and that's where this is part of the Bible where I connected to history, where a king, I think it was King George V, that cut 10 days down to 7 days. Now there was a massive revolution. I think that was in I can't remember what country it is, but anyway, he cut the days from 10 to 7, and there was a massive there was mass killings of civilians because they were angry about why he was cutting the days from 10 to 7, and it was interpreted into the Bible that the days were only made in 7. Now, I'm not too sure, and no one is 100% sure if the world was made in 7 days, but if you put 2 and 2 together, it only makes sense that why would one man cut 10 days in 7, and then 7 wasn't really mentioned. 7 days wasn't really mentioned in the Bible till we started to come into play, and then we started. I think that's the Bible has been tampered with over and over again, but I don't know like I said, I don't know where I read what King cut the days from 10 to 7. But I have a strong feeling that it has something to do with, it has a connection to the Bible.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I haven't investigated it at all. It sounds interesting that the week would be tampered with. I heard something similar when I was listening to Terence McKenna give a talk about the days in the year. I believe he channeled an entity too. And he was saying that the year should really be comprised of 384 days. And he was drawing attention to how the clocks are actually inaccurate and there's like a loss of time or they have to make adjustments, things like leap days and things like that. And he said if it was all to be worked out naturally, it would be 384 days in the year, and the seasons would actually move around. They'd be pushed from season, the place that they occupy over something like a couple of decades. Your winter would turn to summer or something like that. And so he was basically saying we have been so meddled with that, even time and the seasons are just out of kilter with nature.
Yeah, that's what I find very interesting as well. Like the days, some days where it feels like it's just gone past with a breeze. Some days I feel lost because I don't know the actual time, the day, and the month. I completely forget that sometimes. I have to look back on it. As you were saying, with the time lost, I do believe we lost time. We lost the true time, and we lost the true day and year. Because some things to a lot of people make sense. So when I said to a few people on NST, why do we call this the 21st century when it's only the 20th century? Because it's 0 to 2017. And the 19th century was 1989, or started from there. And that we'll call in the 19th century the 20th century, and then we call in the 20th century the 21st century, when it only starts with 20th, yeah? So the year, for me, it works like that. The beginning of the year is the 20th. The beginning of that year is the 20th century. So I'm thinking that's the 20th century. 21st century will be 2117. That will be the 21st century. That's how I think anyway. My logic could be wrong, but I'm thinking that's where time and year got mixed up and arranged a lot, and now we're lost.
Well, it's probably because there's 20 centuries behind and we're actually eating into the 21st, so that's probably just the reference that they're making, that we're actually within the 21st century. So if you were to look at it as 21 sections of 100, you would be now somewhere within the 21st section. That's probably just how they look at it.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of them question. A lot of people question about history. I hear a lot of questions about history. I hear a lot of things about history, and these are students, and let alone academic students, and also students that master in things. And the number of things that they bring up is interesting, yet does not make sense to the way that I think towards the way that they think. Some find that Cleopatra was an amazing queen, well, which I understand. Yes, she was, but they don't know the backstory, that she was speaking to entities, as we're speaking about now. She was actually summoning them, and not only that, the dark side to her was she summoned a lot of entities, she made them work for her, making her become a goddess. And also, not only that, each sibling that she grew up with, she slept with and beheaded each and every single one of them. Now, I don't know what the purpose of that was, but there's a lot of lost history on that part. If you understand what I'm saying, I'm not really into looking into it, but it's interesting how that part of history is not mentioned until you actually look for it yourself. But anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. But the only thing that captured me was how she was summoning all these entities and making them work for her. And then that fella, it did. It worked for her through centuries.
Fascinating stuff, and it's also interesting, isn't it, that in the religious texts, especially probably Christianity, if a person was engaged in making things happen the way they want to make them happen for themselves, which probably affects other people ultimately, then it would be looked at as witchcraft, sorcery, Satanism. See, all of these things, I mean, I'm not giving approval to whatever it is she did or whoever it is she was contacting. But let's say, for instance, I mean, okay, so we're acknowledging that there are things called demons, and people are saying that there's a thing called the devil. Okay, yeah, whatever. But if there are demons, then that has to have its polar opposite also, which means there must be good entities, good non-physical entities out there, because it can't be negative if there isn't a positive. But if someone were to give mention to contacting the positive entities out there, they would still fall under the category of witchcraft, sorcery, and, you know, satanic practices. And yeah, it's really strange, isn't it? It's like everything to do with making contact with the non-physical realm is almost taboo, definitely within religion anyway. But then again, Jesus said, if you listen to what he said in the Bible, Jesus said, test the spirits. Test the spirits. He didn't say ignore the spirits and don't go there and have nothing to do with them. He said test them. Yeah.
Yes, that's very true. That is very true. He does say that, and I do remember him saying. I do remember it being in a passage of the Bible, because I was stuck at the point where I came across a picture where it had the pyramid, one a man, a ladder, a pyramid, and tiles, black and white tiles, and a pillar. So that pillar was in between black and white tiles, and the black and white tiles would fade into darkness, and the pyramid was in the middle of the black and white tiles and darkness, and there was a ladder going to nowhere. Now, this ladder was standing up on its own, and there was a man in that picture. I can't remember where I seen this picture, but then underneath that picture said, choose a path, but remember, you can't, once you go into one path, you can't go back to another. I don't know what that meant. I don't know what it means, and I completely don't have any understanding to any relations to anything. But I remember that picture clearly in my head and what it said and how it looked. It feels like I've just seen it yesterday. But anyway, I don't know if it has anything to do with the spirits, but in saying that, I was stuck at the point of my life where I was thinking, does that have to do with anything of summoning, or maybe going to the dark side and not come back? But then when I kept reading into other stuff as well, and then when I seen that passage, it said test the spirits. Well, then that doesn't mean necessarily for us. If that picture was saying something, it could have meant that if you go into that part of the dark side, then you might get too deep into it, that you get stuck and never come back out. But if you can control it, like you said, like Jesus said, test the spirits. If you can test it and control it, you might work in your favour. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it does. And the picture that you were describing there, that's all classic Illuminati symbology, isn't it, with the checkered floor, which is symbolic of the game, because it's all a game. The ladder, I guess, means the path to ascension. The triangle, well, what's the top of the triangle? It's the eye, isn't it, the all-seeing eye, which is activated, but the thing about not going back is because when you investigate these things, you create a paradigm shift. So once you're now in a new place, it's like you can't experience the old world anymore, because that's a lesser understanding. We're beings, we're expanding, and as we expand, knowledge expands with us. So it's kind of like attempting to put something back in the box which has once filled the box, but now it's removed itself from the constraints of the box. It's become larger, and it's impossible to put back into the box now because it's bigger than the box. I guess that.
Yeah, that's completely what I'm trying to say. It's similar because the way my mind works is I feel like I've created a paradox to every single different numbers of the universe in my mind. But now I'm trying to shut off all these paradoxes and keep, focus on this one world that I'm in now. And I feel like it's broken. It's like a cup. Once you break a cup, and if you try and put the cup back together, you fixed it, but all the cracks are still there. You can't mend the cracks, and that's something that I have to live with. I understand that I've opened all these paradoxes, and it led me to nowhere. It's broken down so much in my lifetime now of understanding. I have this understanding where, like I said, because I dropped this cup and it's smashed, I can fix these pieces, but the cracks will always still be there. Mending it is easy, but the cracks will still be there. Like you said, the whole box. Yeah, sorry, man. Carry on.
No, it's fine. That was interesting what you were saying there, but I wouldn't look at it in terms of breaking something or cracks. More like you've shattered the illusion. So it's becoming apparent to you, as it has to many people, including myself, that there are actually coexisting timelines, and there's a lot of disparity in things that we experience. Once you get to a certain place, you start to consider things like what has been called the Mandela effect, although that's kind of like a new name that was given to it. You realise that things change from moment to moment. The moment is never the same, and the environment is never the same. I mean, you might experience certain anomalies. I've definitely experienced many of them. One, for instance, is I think it was 2015, I believe it was, around the December time. I was sat in a chair in my living room speaking on Zello, and I believe it was 9:30 p.m. in the evening. And my wife was upstairs watching TV, and I got out of the chair and I went upstairs to speak to my wife about something. And then when I got up there, I must have looked at my watch, and my mind got instantly blurred, because now it said midnight. So if I'm getting out of my chair, going up the stairs and speaking to my wife in the bedroom, over 3 hours passed. And then when I mentioned the time to my wife, her mind was blown too. But alongside with the things I've been learning, she's been learning them too, about coexisting timelines, about the Mandela effect, about how it's all an illusion, about how we shape and change reality. But if you're not aware of these concepts, knowledge, power is dependent upon knowledge. You know the saying, don't you? What is the saying about power? Knowledge is power. Well, it's truth. But if you don't receive the data, it's not power, beyond what you previously knew.
That's so true. Because, as I said, and what you were saying, with the whole mending crack, the whole mending the cup and things. That is very, very good the way you explain it. And it's too far-fetched for a lot of people to understand and believe that this whole timeline paradox in your mind works in different ways. But as you said, it only works if you want it to work. And now that I'm shutting off all these, um, you know, timeline paradoxes that I made in my mind, I'm shutting them off completely, and I'm only working with one. I do feel like everything's working in my favour now, and I'm trying to. It's a slow, ongoing process of controlling it, but at the same time, I'm getting there. And it's very interesting that we hit that subject tonight. Because I was kind of surprised, like very surprising what you had to say, and interesting as well.
It's good that you're calibrating, your environment, and you learning to guide it in the direction that you want it to be. But don't make the mistake of thinking that because it's not active right now, it can never be active again. Because remember, you can't take anything away. You can't put anything in, and it's all simultaneous. But we're moving around within the time space reality, So you'll consciously be somewhere, and if it's a good place, great, stay there. But don't forget that everything is contrasted. So what you might think of as something that you wanted to close down, don't be surprised if it ever does surface again. But it serves you for it not to be active right now. Hello?
Yeah, that's very true. And as you said, the mind is a very complex thing. Each individual to their own, when they think of something, they either believe or they don't believe. A lot of them, the way I see it, a lot of them have what's the word for it? It's like a timetable. Yeah, a lot of them is going off a timetable in their own little world. They have this timetable they have to go off, and if skipping a beat that will hurt them in their mind. Yes, but I feel like I've stepped back from that, and I can see it throughout everyone, how they work, how things intervene with each other, and then I started to create this own circle of mine that I've made up. So I've made up this circle where I count each individual to be the same. So there'll be six siblings in one family, and there'll be 6 siblings in another family. Each of these siblings from these different families have the same personality of each other. So, say the oldest one might have the personality of the oldest one, but it could be in reverse. So the oldest one could have the oldest one from the one family of the 6 could have the personality of the other family of the 6, and the second person of the second oldest. Or it could just stay the same. Have the first personality of the oldest have another personality, the same personality as the other oldest in that other individual's family. And that's the way I calculate things and how I see things work. Sometimes it might not. Sometimes it will. It might be just 2 siblings in one family, another 2 siblings in another family. 2 of those siblings from both different families have a similar personality of each other. Could be opposite. And you can mix it up and keep going on and on and on and on. And it works in your favour sometimes because you can easily pick them out and tell them how they are. But then a lot of them will be shocked and then say, how do you even know that? And then you don't know how to explain it to them, let alone trying to tell them how you picture things. Oh yeah, it's very interesting how I see things.
And reincarnation is actually a reality. And the example that we've seen of it recently is that in 2009, my wife's aunt moved on, she died. And then a couple of years ago, my wife's sister had a baby, which was a girl. And we can clearly see through the antics and the demeanour and personality traits in this individual that it is definitely a reincarnation of my wife's aunt. the gestures, just the way this child is, and it's true. But this thing about people, we call them sheeple and all that lot, but it's just part of the process, isn't it? Because in order to be disillusioned, as we now really are, we are disillusioned. The illusion isn't active for us anymore. We've kind of stripped it down. But in order to become disillusioned, you have to have been illusioned at one point, So we I don't know, maybe we get a bit beyond ourselves when we refer to certain sections of the population as sheeple, because let's not forget, we were sheeple at one point in time. And although the people who we call sheeple now are privy to more and more information than we were, I mean, we caught on in the beginning. There was very little information. It's almost like we was ahead of the game. But it is a bit frustrating when there's so much information available now to people, and they just don't want to hear of it. They don't want to know. But then it's right for them, isn't it? Everybody is perfect after their own kind, and there's a message in that, really. And basically, it's kind of to mind our own business. There's nothing wrong with passing information on. It's good. Sometimes you feel like you need to inform people of things, and that's not a bad thing. But we can't infringe upon their free will if they choose to remain to be unaware of a lot of what's happening.
Yeah, that's true. And as for us, when we stand back and see and look at the world for what it is, it's somewhat scary yet exciting, and it's hard to explain. Every time I try to put a word to it, it keeps getting. I keep forgetting the word, to be honest with you. But yeah, it is strange. Like you said, we were once sheeple, and I completely understand, because when after 19, I just started to open my eyes and step back and look at the world for what it really was, and it was. For me, I found it really hard to try and block it out. So each time I tried to block it out, it kept coming back, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. So I was like, forget it. I'm not going to block it out anymore. Just keep going on with it and gather as much in the amount of data I can, and store it and complete every single puzzle in my perfect form of how I see it. But like I said, knowledge is power, and right now I still feel like there's a lot that I'm missing, and there's a lot I'm still wanting to learn. Besides everything I've put together, another interesting thing tonight that we come across when I say some stuff that I bring up and broke down and decoded myself, I mentioned to you, and out of nowhere you say, oh yes, it has something to do with a book I've never read before and never even heard till tonight, which amazes me a lot.
Yeah, so I suppose what's the moral of the story? The more we know, the more we don't know, that contrast thing. If we've got more knowledge than we had, there's more knowledge yet to learn. It's polar opposite, but it has been fascinating, this conversation, and it started with my interest in you basically saying how things were working out for you. So I'll go full circle with that, and I'll say, yeah, I hope they continue to work out for you, and maybe, because we've talked a while now, haven't we, in this channel, maybe somebody else wants to start a conversation or something, and yeah, good luck with that, and I'm sure we'll catch up again at some other points. I'll cut you loose in this conversation and give somebody else a go on the mic.
Yes, that's very true. It's been a very, very pleasant chat tonight. I actually enjoyed it a lot. As was in spots of the author or the writer that you were speaking of. I will look into that and actually listen and take a look at the clips and whatever books it leads me to, because I'm very interested in that.
Okay, I'll just end this by saying something about questions, because questions to my mind are always answered as long as they mean something to you. So just be confident in the knowledge that the answers always come, because they do.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Well, yeah, I want to keep looking into a lot of what you said tonight. It is been a pleasure. I will speak to you more tomorrow. Thanks for that talk tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise, you do sound tired, so yeah, rest easy. I'll talk later.
And looks like that's all the time we have. Thank you for listening to All Things Tech. That's the end of our Conscious Chat broadcast. Hear more by visiting www.truthbook.tk. Shows are available for free on SoundCloud and YouTube as well. Those are linked up on www.truthbook.tk if you can visit the website, or if you're on YouTube or SoundCloud, just search for Conscious Chat. But again, thank you for listening to All Things Tech.